Pathfinders of the Dark. Book 1, The Battle of Mars. Episode 7. Chapter 13. Direct Hit. The Vigilant Guardian fought back with everything it had. Railguns thundered in steady rhythm while missile batteries launched coordinated salvos. Point defense beams sliced through the dark, intercepting threats before they could land. For every missile the Varithra sent, the human ship answered with fire of its own. But the enemy had the numbers, and worse, the enemy had the weave. "Another wave incoming," Torres called. "They are focusing the starboard side." Jax's voice stayed level despite the pain. "Roll 30 degrees starboard. Forward batteries fire on my mark." "Mark." The ship twisted and unleashed a heavy volley. Several Varithra missiles died mid-flight, but one slipped through the screen and struck the hull near engineering. The impact shook the entire bridge. "Direct hit on deck 4, someone reported. "Fires and hull damage." Stone remained calm, her voice cutting through the rising chaos. "Damage control. Get those fires out. All weapons, keep firing. We are not done." Jax pulled the Battery 2 loop into his ear because the counterfire had come down to half seconds now and he needed to feel the guns, not just read them on the plot. The gunnery deck poured into his head, a world away from the bridge and 30 meters below it. Okafor's voice, unhurried as a tide table, running her litany over the roar of the autoloaders. 3-round reload, on the rails, stand by. "Vasquez, your elevation is lagging. Fix it. Stand by." The crash and slam of the loading train. Heat warnings chiming their small, polite chimes into an inferno. Somewhere back along the train, a young loader was counting rounds out loud to keep his hands moving, voice cracking on the numbers, and an older voice beside him picked up the count and steadied it. The way you steady a line in a sea. Down there, nobody could see the battle. Down there, the war was noise and recoil, and the deck bucking underfoot, and the readouts climbing into the red, and they served the guns anyway, blind, on faith, on the word of a weather report they had adopted at a mess table 2 years ago. "Battery 2, Jax said into the loop, watching a gap form in the branching, 2 seconds wide and closing. "Stand by. On my mark, you have a window low on the port quarter. 1 salvo. Make it count." "Copy. Weather report." Okafor, calm as deep water. "Guns. You heard the man." "Mark." Battery 2 spoke with one voice, and Jax felt it through his boots before the plot showed it. And out in the dark, 2 Varithra hulls ran into a future their consensus had ruled improbable and came apart. The gun deck loop erupted, whoops and profanity, and the young loader's voice cracking again. The other way this time. And for 3 full seconds, the Vigilant Guardian was not a wounded ship being herded toward a killing ground. She was a breaking yard, and she was taking the enemy apart down to the plate. Then, the swarm closed the gap, as though it had already mourned its dead and moved on. And the moment was over. Jax wiped fresh blood from his nose. The lens was feeding him futures faster than he could process them, and the effort of choosing among them felt like prying his own skull open from the inside. He knew the truth of the thing better than any instructor had ever managed to teach it, because he had learned it at 13 at a yard gate. The lens did not show certainty. It showed the branching, the dozen ways the next 4 seconds could go. A Pathfinder did not see the future. A Pathfinder chose one, and paid for the choice, and lived ever after with the ones he had not been able to reach. A blur formed. "Hard burn ventral. Now." The ship dropped sharply. Their fire answered again, scoring hits on 2 enemy hulls. For a moment, it felt like they might hold. Then the futures collapsed inward, and every path Jax could see ran through fire. "Captain," he said urgently, "they are shifting formation. They are about to saturate us. There is no clean way through this one." Stone's jaw tightened. She did not waste time doubting him. In 2 years, no one on the Guardian had learned to doubt the mechanic. Do what you can. The next wave came in fast, too many to stop. Jax found the single path that would save the most lives. It was narrow and brutal, and it did not save everyone. Roll 40 degrees, all point defense to the port arc. The ship moved as best it could, guns blazing, and destroyed most of the incoming missiles. Most of them. The one that hit did so with devastating force. The explosion tore through Deck 2. The bridge lurched. The main viewport cracked in a spiderweb pattern, and emergency lights snapped on as main power failed in sections. "Major breach on Deck 2, Torres shouted. "We are venting atmosphere." Smoke poured into the bridge. Debris rained from the ceiling. Someone was screaming. Jax was thrown against his station. When he pushed himself up, he saw Lieutenant Reyes pinned beneath a fallen support beam near the navigation console. Her eyes were open, locked on him. He started toward her. "Jax." Stone caught his arm. "We need you at your station." Another alarm screamed. A second missile was already inbound, and the lens showed it to him in pieces, a future arriving whether he chose it or not. It was the gate again. It was the crane and the rain in the break. He could see the path where he reached her and the path where he saved the ship, and they were not the same path. And only one of them was his to walk. "Hard burn, all thrusters," he shouted, forcing himself back to the display. The ship tried to respond, but it was sluggish from the damage. The second missile struck amidships, and the impact was catastrophic. Jax was thrown to the deck again. The bridge filled with the sound of tearing metal. Through the smoke, he saw Lieutenant Reyes's eyes go still, half a meter from the corner of the console where a gray crayon warship stood guard under a yellow sun. Stone's voice cut through the noise, strained but commanding. "Damage control teams to Deck 2. All stations, report." Jax pushed himself up on shaking arms. Blood ran down the side of his face. The lens was still active, but the futures it showed him now were all variations on the same ending. The ship was badly hurt, and the Verithra were not finished. Stone looked at him, her expression grim but steady. "Keep us alive, Jax. That is all we can do right now." Jax turned back to the display, the weight of Reyes settling into his chest beside all the others he had carried since the strand. He kept calling maneuvers. He kept calling firing solutions. But for the first time since the battle began, he was not sure how much longer any of it would matter. Chapter 14. A Ship Adrift. The Vigilant Guardian was no longer fighting. It was surviving. The Verithra had pulled back. No new wave had come in nearly 30 minutes. The enemy held position just outside effective range, as if assessing the damage they had already done. On the bridge, the roar of battle had given way to the low groan of stressed metal and the urgent voices of damage control teams. Jax moved through the corridors with one of those teams, helping drag fire suppression gear toward a stubborn blaze on Deck 3. His head still throbbed from the lens, but the device had gone mercifully quiet. It always did this after a hard engagement, like a muscle gone slack after tearing. He had learned not to trust the silence. It only meant the swarm was not deciding anything yet. They worked until the fire was beaten back to smoldering wreckage. Only then did Jax let himself breathe. Okafor found him in the passage outside Battery 2, her forearm wrapped in a field, dressing gone dark at the edge, half her loading train behind her in the bay being seen to by medics. She did not say anything about the half that was not. She looked at him a long moment with the flat steadiness of a woman who had been doing arithmetic of her own. "Best shooting of my life today," she said. "Worst day I ever had it on." She put her unburned hand briefly on his shoulder, the way his father used to settle a thing that had come loose. "You gave us the window weather report. We will not talk about the rest." and she went back to her people because that was where chiefs went. Word had already spread through the crew. The mechanic had kept them alive through the worst of it. Some looked at him with gratitude, others with something closer to unease. The look people gave a man who could see the moment of their death before they could. He knew that look better than they did. He had grown up under it. His own father had worn it on a strand 20 years before. An hour later, he found himself near the bridge, where Stone was directing repairs. Her left hand trembled when she thought no one was watching. The bandage on her forehead was stained dark. She saw him and gave a short nod. Status. Deck 3 fire is out. We lost 2 more containing it. His voice was flat with exhaustion. Still no new attack. They are holding. Stone studied a damage report on a cracked datapad. They think we are finished, or they are regrouping for something bigger. Either way, this quiet will not last. Jax glanced down the corridor, where a damage control team was carefully working Lieutenant Reyes's body free of the fallen beam. The sight tightened his chest. Stone followed his gaze. For a moment, her shoulders sagged. The drawings are still taped to her console, she said quietly. Maya's. I keep thinking someone is going to have to tell that little girl, and then I keep thinking, with what is coming, there may be no one left to do the telling. She straightened, because captains do not get to finish thoughts like that. I saw it coming, Jax said. I should have done more. You kept the rest of us alive. That is more than most could have managed. Her voice was firm, but there was a raw edge under it. A young ensign approached, pale. Captain, partial comms are back. Fleet Command says the Varithra have broken off their main assault across the sector. They are consolidating. We are not the only ship they hit hard. Stone's expression hardened. Then this reprieve is temporary. Later, while the others rested, Jax found a quiet corner and sat with his back against the bulkhead. Torres slid down beside him and silently offered a small metal flask. Contraband, Torres said with a tired half-smile. Figured we earned it. Jax took a small sip. The burn was welcome. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the ship struggle to stay alive. You ever think about what it is actually like for them? Torres said eventually. The Varithra, up close. Jax considered it. He had spent 2 years inside a borrowed sliver of how they thought, and his whole life before that inside an unaided version of the same thing, and he still could not have answered the question honestly. The lens came out of one of them, he said. Did you know that? The brass do not advertise it. We brought a coordinating unit down nearly whole early in the war, and somebody figured out how to cut a piece of its sensory tissue into something a human could wear. He touched the device at his temple. When I am running it, I am borrowing a thread of what their whole swarm feels at once. Just a thread. It nearly kills me to hold it. They live in it. All of them. All the time. And it costs them nothing. Torres was quiet for a moment. That why the headaches? That is why a lot of things. Jax leaned his head back. Here is the part that doesn't make sense until you have felt it. They have all of it, and it costs them nothing, and I have a thread of it, and it is killing me, and I am still the more dangerous one, because they can only ever agree on the obvious. 1,000 minds all flowing to the same likeliest path. I am one mind. I can look down a path they would never bother to look down, and I can choose it and make it true. He almost laughed. The instructors told us near the end that the only thing that has ever made a swarm turn and run is one of us. I did not believe them. I think I am starting to. Torres glanced at the lens, then away, as if it might look back. My little brother used to call me a hero for joining the fleet. Said I was going to save the galaxy. He let out a bitter laugh. Some hero. We are barely keeping this wreck together. At least you can tell him you tried, Jack said. I have a little brother, too, back on Earth. He does not know what I am. I would like to keep it that way. Another long silence. Torres raised the flask in a small toast. To the ones we could not save, and the ones we still might. Jax tapped it with his knuckles. Yeah. When the rest Stone had ordered was nearly up, Jack stood. His legs felt steadier. The brief human contact had helped more than he expected. As he headed back toward the bridge, Stone's voice came over the ship-wide comm, strained but steady. All hands, this is the captain. The Vigilant Guardian is wounded, but we are not broken. The Varithra have pulled back for now, but they will return. Repair what you can and rest when you must. We still have a fight ahead of us. For Earth, for the Pilgrims, for every soul counting on us. Jax allowed himself a small, tired smile as he walked. The ship was adrift, but it was not done yet, and neither was he. Episode 8 arrives next week. The Order.